Welcome to selfdiscoverymedia.com, where the orchard of wisdom shows are at your fingertips. It ignites your soul, your heart, your spirit, your mind, and your body with illumination from people who have made the journey before you. They're here now to help you on your journey, on your path of self-discovery. We are funded by you, the audience, and the people we interview. If you wish to support us, please go to selfdiscoverymedia.com and press on our Fund Action button. Anything is appreciated. We'd like you to sit back and enjoy the shows. Here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Mental Awareness. Mental awareness is all about actually understanding why we do the things that we do. And you can discover mental awareness right here on selfdiscoverymedia.com. I'm your host, Sarah Troy. My wonderful guest is Lara Sabanosh today. She's talking about a topic that I think really doesn't get talked about a lot. Abuse within the military is a silent epidemic. She's the author of the memoir CAGED, The True Story of Abuse, Betrayal, and GTMO. The wall of silence surrounding domestic abuse in the military and in the government is a high one. In her memoir, Laura talks about the secrecy, the fear, and despair of being in an abusive relationship, and hopes that her story can change a few failed, faulted systems. This searing memory of From the Window to the Former Marine, Christopher II, settling the record straight and breaking through the military wall and silences surrounding domestic abuse. She says that on January 11th, 2015, one day after being reported missing, 3 days after last seeing his family, Christopher II, a former Marine working as a civil employee in Guantanamo Bay Naval Station in Cuba, was found dead, floating in the water near the base. Over the months following his mysterious deaths, and suspicion was casted on his widow, Lara, and the man exposed as her lover, the base commander officer, Captain J.R. Nettleton. So Caged is a story of abuse. She was normally known as far as Lara Tur. Is that how I pronounce it, love?
It is, yes.
And speaks out about what really happened on that horrific night when her husband disappeared and throughout most of the nearly 20-year marriage, as well as her relationship with J.R. Nettleton. Writing from the perspective of both a victim and a victim advocate serving naval families, she also makes an impression plea for the change in the way domestic violence is handled within the military and the government. The civilian spouse, the government employee, is not a protected individual, and victims are punished under the current system. Well, that has to change because nobody should be punished twice. You're already being punished with the abuse, and you need people to step up and be there to quintessentially save you. And to be under the gun of abuse again is just something we cannot accept in 2022, and nor should we have even accepted in many years before. Welcome to the show, Lara.
Thank you so much for having me. I very much appreciate it.
Abuse, we're all kind of raising our head on it at the present moment, where the Me Too movement is talking about misogyny and sexism, and we've talked about domestic abuse a great deal, but people don't understand the whole many levels of abuse and how it can be hidden so well or denied so well, and I imagine in the military even more so, and that anybody speaking out against it, it's all a pack of lies. They would never do that, and nobody believes you. And especially if it's physical abuse, you can see the bruises or you can see the something. If it's emotional abuse, no. The mind is going through this tormented, twisted thing on its own, and there's no evidence of it, so to speak. Right, Laura?
Absolutely. It becomes a shameful game. And as you said, it's the punishment that keeps on going from many factions. So for victims, this idea that we bridge over into survivors so quickly,
Yeah.
getting away from, our abusers is really a myth. And because we deal with systems that should be in place, but we go through quite literally a vortex of people who are doing, well, if it was really that bad, or if,
Yes,
but we
yes.
can't see it, and oh, but you look so lovely, and he was such a good person, or they were such a good person. And so it is a which is where the book came from, helping people understand the perceptions that they think are happening, but you just don't know. You don't live in somebody else's house. And so it is helping to understand that there are so many things. It's beyond just, a
Mm.
culture and understanding that it is a global message, and it just doesn't happen in one area.
It's happened since the beginning of time. Um,
Absolutely.
and it's, especially mental abuse. Um, People don't realize how soul, heart, and spirit destroying it is when somebody is verbally battering you day in and day out, and how it breaks you down and breaks you down. And we talk about dis-ease in people when people are ill at ease. Well, dis-ease in people creates disease in people. And then people start getting physically sick. And, but why? How come you're so sick? And they don't understand that the emotional battering has to reflect from somewhere, and it will reflect from a body disease, because it can't take that kind of abuse all the time, can it?
No, it can't. I've tried to describe to people, the inside, you die a
Yes.
little bit every day, as you go. I had somebody, actually, when I was, after he had died, I had one of the investigators who, and it is a cruel question, well, how could you have stayed so long?
Hmm.
And because eventually you die, you know
Yes.
there
Yes.
is the who you were when you came in is no longer there.
Hmm.
And so you try to become what they want you to be. And I spent most of the 20 years, and you can see it in the pictures, I'm consistently trying to be something that I wasn't, whether it was hair colors, weight,
Mm.
fashion changes, anything that I could do to try to live up to something that I truly was not. And the eventually I'm just a shell of a human being,
Mm.
going through a process.
This idea that we have got to, be something for them other than being ourselves. It's not a lack in us, it's a lack in them. And them having you wanting to be this chameleon and change to their whim every 5 seconds, is a desperate need within them. They're unwilling to go in and resolve their own little demons that lie inside. Instead, they're wanting everybody on the outside to fix it in some form or other. And if you don't look the part, it's like somebody buying a new car or just moving to a new place expecting everything to be different. No, if you don't take care of the internal, the external is always going to be something out to get you. And um, it didn't matter what you would have done. It didn't matter what your hair color would have been. If you'd won a global prize or anything like that, nothing would have made a difference, because
Sure,
the trouble and the struggle was within him. Yet you were just
sure.
the battering post.
Absolutely. And we experienced, there were throughout the years, but it took a long time to get to that point where I realized it was not going to be anything that I could do. Um, and I changed education. I thought I could fix him.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And if I changed, and and I got better educated
Mm-hmm.
on how I could help him, if I became it just became something else, I
Yes.
became the person. He didn't change. He actually, in 20 years of pictures, looks exactly the same, pretty
Mm.
much. And so you do you it until you realize that you cannot do those things. And there was kind of an epiphany moment that I have to do for me. I
Mm.
have I am worth more. I am
Yes.
the person that I need to be. And when that started to happen, there was kind of an awakening, a slow one.
Mm-hmm.
And that process becomes internal, trying to change even the damage that's done. And that is a daily, even today, a daily process,
Oh, yeah.
good days and bad days.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but even and it's interesting, pictures do say a lot. Because even as I've gone back, and my daughters and I have gone back through pictures today, it's the slow change in process where I can see I am very much set today. And as I realized that I could be so much better for myself, then I was also better for my girls.
Yes.
And that, kind of collective that was going on through 20 years, that I had to always change who this was outside, and kind of damper down what was going inside and who I was. And when that stopped, the change that was going on outside stopped. I started to realize that I was who I was, and I was okay. I was a good
Right.
person.
There's nothing wrong with you.
There's
Nothing
nothing
wrong with
wrong
you.
with me,
Yeah.
and I could have better out there.
Yes.
You know, and it doesn't mean that I'm a perfect person,
Mm-hmm.
or that I'm not going to falter, or there are people in my life that I'm like, oh, this is not good. um, and but everybody does that. But it's always a growing and learning process, and I think when we stop doing that, that's probably not a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm constantly growing in those ways. But during that time period, it took me to realize that I have to do me first,
Yes.
um, and stop doing it for somebody else.
Yeah.
And that's where it was a lot of
Well,
growth.
here you are on your road to your own self-discovery and your own recovery. And then something happens to him where he ends up dead. And, they're automatically going to put the blame on the spouse. And, you talking abuse, what are you talking about? I don't see any scars or evidence. Where's your hospital bills and all of that? Right. And what do you mean emotional? You're probably just a difficult woman, and all of this stuff that they go through. And it's, you're facing that abuse even from beyond the grave.
Absolutely. And the irony in that is there was physical, and there were, but it meant that they had to address that. So
Yes.
when the reports came in, and before he actually had, it had been confirmed that he had died. I had bruising, because he had attacked me that night. And uh, you know but see, nobody wanted to talk about that.
Right.
Nobody wanted to talk about the domestic violence that had been going on, that had occurred that night, uh, because that addresses a problem that happens to so many people. And all they wanted to talk about was something that was so salacious and so much
Mm,
more exciting to talk about. And I'm like, but this is the problem. I have had tried to talk about these things before, and you still don't want to hear me.
right.
And then I spent the next several years, and here we are 7 years later, and we still don't want to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I spent several years with a lot of communication that was, if you just be quiet, it will go away. If you but just there are so many that media reports came out, and
Mm,
things were reported. It was very skewed. It was very one-sided. Just, if you and your daughters, just it's better to be quiet. Just don't answer things. And it came from multiple factions, and I was like, but this is so wrong. That's
yeah.
not really, we're giving somebody who is there, that was an abuser. And I said, you're giving elevation, and you're reporting things incorrectly. And I said, at what point do we start telling the way things really are? And that was where I finally said, no, this is enough.
Yes.
And I said, this is the problem. Everybody, doesn't want to hear what happens behind, when the door closes at night, or during the day.
Mm,
And so then I spent some time and really thought about it. And And I started putting the book together, and I said, you know what, people heard so much, and I was quiet for so long.
Mm.
And and then it came out, and it still got, even I got quite a bit of backlash from
Oh
it,
yeah,
because you're right, oh, that's not true.
right.
He was such a wonderful man. He would give you the shirt off his back. Oh, I'm sure he would give anybody else the shirt off his back.
Yeah, it's just not you.
That's not me.
Yeah.
You know, and it was, trying to get people, and it still happens today, where people have this elevated view of somebody, and the pictures that come out, it's hard for people to grasp. They put out pictures of him as they put their pictures out there of him as an active duty Marine, and well, from boot camp. Well, first of all, he was in his 40s when he passed away, and that was in the early 90s, and he was kicked out of the Marines, and of which I didn't find out until after he passed. And he wasn't an honorable military member. And when he passed, it wasn't just the fact that he passed away, and it was surrounded with the controversy. And I spent half my life with this man. So
Right.
not only did I have somebody that we had a tumultuous and abusive marriage, but I did spend half my life with him. So there was a process of dealing with grief and, questioning my life. But then I started finding out a lot about a man that I actually didn't know a lot about either. Beyond his service record that was also tainted, and information that I began to realize that he had a very hidden life. And so now a public view of him was elevated even higher, and which then led to people thinking even more about, well, he couldn't be abusive because he was such wonderful. He was I heard stories. He was a decorated war hero. He never went to war. He was so amazing. But this man that I had begun dating when I was 19, I didn't even know he had already been in trouble for drugs and alcohol abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I'm trying to grieve. My children are trying to grieve. And now I'm starting to find out even more about a man that was troubled, and we had such an issue in our marriage. And so that piled on a lot of additional issue and trauma for us for a long time as well.
Thing is, if they hadn't brushed it under the rug right at the beginning, and you would have known what you were marrying, or wouldn't perhaps married him, right? Every time anybody brushes things under their rug or chooses to paint people through the rose-colored glasses, they're doing it for their own agenda. And a lot of it is guilt, because they knew they should have stepped in earlier, right?
Sure.
And if you paint them as all holier than thou, and then you must be the villain, right?
Sure.
Because they're holier than thou. And for them then to backtrack and go, no, actually he wasn't. This is really what he was. It's, oh no, that's a pack of lies. You're dishonoring his name, because the picture's already been painted and people don't want to change the view of the picture.
Absolutely. I had begun to hear, a lot of information as we had gone on through, after he passed. And, it wasn't, when people lose a spouse and they go through a grieving process, and, it, especially, under different circumstances, there is time people have to work through. And ours was, and my children losing their father, ours was just a roller coaster. We'd already had a roller coaster
Yes.
of life.
Yeah.
And then to have ours surrounded, and then with controversy and a lot of people who came in without support, but now with fingers pointing.
Yes.
And then to aid it with information that put into question who the person was that we lived with, knowing the information we had, and then start slapping documents down to us that started to question information that I'm now feeling very uncomfortable with. You know, it surrounded a lot of anger. It heightened a lot of trauma, trust.
Yes.
I, I'm the support systems that we thought we had just disintegrated. Um, and so, there was a retraction period. And I started to see over time where for other individuals, it would be very easy to go and slip into dark places very quickly. Where when you lose that ability to, understand what is happening, where to go, what to do, and you don't know who's there for you.
Right.
And, entities that put out there to the public, just call on us, we'll help you.
Yes.
Let us know if you're in trouble. Except for those were the same entities that were, telling
covering
us
it up in the first place.
covering it up, or telling us it couldn't have been. I had one that one agency that when, I was talking about, I had done a protective order years ago, said, well, you were still with him, so it couldn't have been that bad. And I'm like, well, I'm pretty sure if a judge came in on the weekend and did an emergency protective order, I would think that is pretty significant. Well, you went back with him. So now you do start to internalize, well, maybe it wasn't.
The thing is, you went back with him because you had children, and where else were you to go?
Right.
And also, when you are dead inside, I mean, you're calling for help, and you're rather crippled inside because you just don't know who are your allies, where can you go? Is this your lot in life? I mean, you go for all of, is this all I deserve? Is this all I'm worth? Right.
Sure.
And if there isn't somebody on the
messages.
outside to pull you out, all you're doing is going around in turmoil inside.
Sure. And I would hear those messages that, I was a very lucky woman, and he was my breadwinner, and he
Yeah.
paid the bills, and he did these grandiose gestures, and and so it did become kind of a, it is a mind game after a while.
Yeah.
What people didn't see was how many walls in all the years that holes would be punched in, how many pieces of furniture had been destroyed.
And what did you do? You probably fixed up the holes and you threw away the furniture so nobody saw it.
Absolutely. Those pieces don't exist. How many people came to the rescue when I had to scoop my children out of the house? I actually am pretty good with some spackle and how to fix a hole in the wall. And it's not my thing, but I got good at learning how to fix a hole and make sure nobody knew, and how to put makeup over a bruise. And but he was smart. He didn't do it in places where we would have to immediately, if we were going out,
right,
how to make excuses when he missed, family dinners, and how to apologize, and for important events. And, but towards the end, it fell apart. It got sloppier. He wasn't very good about doing it in private. And so there were people who began to see it publicly.
Yes.
So there were people who saw drinks thrown on me in public, and, some of the more intoxicated events where he became outrageous in behavior. So it was, where people started to question, that's not right. And but then at the same time, there was an air of, well, that's your house. What happens in your house States. And
Nothing, no business of ours. Yeah. Yeah.
right.
Hmm.
Because in some respects, this is where in the, military installations, people don't want to get caught up with
Yeah.
what happens in all of the different,
Mm. And the
how.
military doesn't want to really face it because very often you do have somebody that is going to be on the front lines or has an important role. And for them to admit that there's something wrong with this guy and that they may have to do a psych evolve and then it will lose him altogether, they don't want to do that. So they rather just, no, it's just, men will be men. It's just, he's just letting off steam, or, they'll make any kind of excuse, or she's just lying. And instead of facing the truth of what's really going on, because if they would pay attention to that, then they would know that this person that you maybe have put into an important position, and if you're putting a gun in someone's hand, or the computer that can set off bombs or anything else, this person, if they're volatile at home, what makes to say they're not going to be volatile at work, and just show it in a different way? So they don't want to pay attention to that, because it would mean that they would actually have to question what they are like, in the military.
Right. And, having worked with the Family Service Center, when I was down there, there's and then understanding the reporting that's done on within the United States and on the global spectrums, our ability to report, over a several year time period, military reporting had maybe 40,000. I don't even think they did that many. And there was a very low number of reports for domestic violence. But on a global scale, they have, 1 in 3 women report domestic violence, like every 20 minutes.
Yes.
And, the numbers that they have for the defense area don't match. And they've had where they've gone in and they've done these defense, committee hearings, and they've talked about that they just haven't paid the attention to it.
Right.
And so we've had, addressed the issue, or I should say that's a royal we, where they've gone in and they said, oh, well, now we need to pay a little more attention. We need to do a little bit more, checks and balances, but they're still not paying attention,
Right.
even with their new funding of it. They've said, well, we'll make sure that there's more penalty phase, but somebody has to get there.
But the stitch in time is that before you get to we're going to fine you for behaving like that. It's like the behavior is calling out for help. They need psych help. They need help to control their anger, or why are they being the way they are? You need to help them there. Penalty phase of you lose a few days work, or you lose money, or we're going to charge you this. What does that mean?
We're going to arrest you. Yeah, it doesn't. Right. So
it's a Band-Aid.
They would have, when we worked in it, they have these committee hearings, and they basically get a committee together, which has their command. So if I were a dependent still, so when I started, I was a dependent when I first got married, and if I would have reported what my husband had done to me when we were first married, then we would have gone to these committees, and they would have determined whether or not we met a criteria for domestic violence.
Yeah.
If they decide that we don't meet a criteria, well, then that's it. There's nothing.
But what is the criteria based on? I mean, if you're being abused.
If they decide it's an impact, whether or not they've decided they feel, so they go through a bunch of, check boxes in this private, closed door meeting that has the service member, that has their command and a bunch of other people in this meeting. My problem with it is that you don't have representation necessarily for the victim.
Mm-hmm.
It's more so for the abuser. And at that time, it can be shut down. It may or may not even make it there. And I know military says, oh, but we're really trying, but we're really not, because the dependents, and even for the government, there's nothing for government employees. So at that time, my husband and I were government employees, and there's nothing. But if you're a military dependent and the service member you're reporting on is a mission essential employee and they deem them really important, it depends on whether or not the command really wants to do anything about it. And that's the problem.
Yes, yes.
And so it won't even get to a phase where they do something about it. Their idea is, and they do the same thing with sexual assault. The victim is still in a position whether or not we want to believe or not believe that person. And the penalty will lie within the victim, not with the offender.
Yes. Is it a fear of a sign of weakness that you need mental health? Mental help, that to admit that this person is going through something and this is the reaction to it, the abuse. We have it obviously, with addiction and many other things. And if you're not going to pay attention to that mental health, that person is going to be detrimental to someone, whether they take out a gun and shoot a whole load of people or whether they do something wrong while they're working. Or they go home and they beat their spouses or girlfriends or whatever. If we don't pay attention to the signs and deal with it, this whole male thing that needing mental support is a sign of weakness has to be thrown out, because the strength and the courage is admitting something is wrong and I need help. And you see it in the police force, you see it in many forces. Anytime they may have post-traumatic stress, or anytime that they, are going through something, no, I could lose my job. It's a sign of weakness. And that right there, that little nugget there needs to be completely obliterated. And if you can get rid of that, it's a sign of weakness, and that actually asking for help, if it's a sign of strength, we might change that whole dialogue.
Sure. I think that part of it too is that it becomes it's not an essential part of the military system. And families are not considered what they do. It's not their job. It's the programs that are there they're fluff pieces, essentially. They're there because somebody said, it makes us look good. We do this because, it's made somebody out in the world, here, because we're addressing an issue. But this is not what
they're
we
dressing.
do.
They're salad dressing. That's the only dressing they're doing.
We're addressing somebody's issue. But our goal and mission is to, we're doing tactical. We're here to, set the, mindset. We've got, global missions. We do, whether it's through, our, war or, keeping peace and safety on a global level, which for myself and looking at, I think a lot of other people, if you can't keep us safe at home, and in core family measures, then you're not doing any of your job. And on a basic level, if service members and the support teams, if the people that are supposed to be supporting and helping the service member and making sure that they're doing well and they're keeping themselves, healthy in general, even mentally healthy. If everybody doesn't have something to keep that well connected on a basic foundation level, then the missions that they want to do on a tactical level are cracked.
Yes. And what happens with cracks? Things completely, no amount of Gorilla Glue is going to stick them back together.
Absolutely.
It shows the system is broken and it needs to be completely rebuilt.
Right. And eventually all of these members will go back into the civilian world. And if they are not mentally prepared and healthy, And that goes with, the government personnel, because we do go with them all around the world. And if we don't have the support, mental support there too, making sure that we're safe, then, and we have to go back in, whether it's retirement or going into civilian jobs or other relationships. And if there's no support there for all of us in general, you put us in very precarious and dangerous situations as well in those relationship and family units. So it is a lonely place to be.
Yes.
It makes
But
us feel that
the
we're not
problem is, yes,
valued.
it's a lonely place to be in your own persona, but there are so many
Right.
other people that are so utterly lonely too because they feel all alone. Now, if all of you
Yeah.
people come together and support, all right,
Right.
now you realize, okay, I'm not so lonely in this. There are so many more
Exactly.
of us. Let's make sure we have a choir that sings out,
Exactly.
right?
If
Instead of
everybody
one
just
feeling
would
one
say,
lonely voice. Yeah.
exactly. And I think it would resonate much louder.
Yeah.
There was, when they were trying to model even programs for government and, or for military factions, they asked if there was anything in the civilian sector they could model after. And the result was they said no.
What?
And so when you hear that, you then have to think, well, then the system itself is broken.
Yes.
Then our support systems for domestic violence victims in totality.
Yeah.
So whether you look at us in and as military dependents, service members, the those that are trying to support and live in those worlds, and then going all the way out into the civilian sectors, and then on a global level, if you can't see anything that is a modeling piece to say this is working, we've got something that can help people, and let's expand it and use it, and you can't say, yep, this program works, then we're not, then you've left a whole group of people to say, you're alone. You're alone. And
Yes.
yet you're there. You're saying, we acknowledge you.
Yeah.
We acknowledge all of you, but
But
you
you
have
don't count.
no. Yeah,
You
you
don't
have no
count.
place.
Yeah, yeah, we see you. Yeah, oh, we feel sorry for you. Shame. I'm so
Right,
sorry. But go and try this. We've done our job. Next,
right,
Yeah.
right. You want to allocate funding and money, and I hear that other countries are saying, we want to hear from you. Our country says it too, but then you say there's no programs that work. What are you putting
Well,
money
then
out for?
if the programs don't work, then clearly you need to change the programming.
Right.
Right? I mean, why don't you go into the private sector where so many people have gone off and created their own solutions that serve other people? Like, I interview an awful lot of military people, veterans, that when they came back with the post-traumatic stress and the anger and the this and that, they said, yeah, they had a little bit of help from the military, but really they felt alone. So they started their own organizations to serve their own people, which now is also serving the entire community. They understand what they need. They
Right.
understand what they're going through. So you should take all of these people that have been going through those various things, put them together with some expertise, and create programs that will serve the people right from the very
Exactly.
core, not the
Right.
surface.
Right. And because you tell you, if you put out to all of us that you're right, you hear us, we're
Yeah.
here, you make it very
Really?
dangerous.
I can't see you.
Exactly. You place us in great danger
Yes.
when you put out on a platform that you want us to expose ourselves and report and tell you that we're in these relationships and we should get out of them. But from the time that we tell that we want to get out, and we actually tell our abusers, it's from that moment and 2 years after that it becomes the most dangerous time for us.
Yes. Yes.
And so it is, even for myself, if somebody comes to myself, and I know other advocates, and I don't advocate with individuals. I do tell people that there are places that they can go get information, because it becomes it can be very dangerous,
Yeah.
and people should find someone they trust and be able to talk to and plan, because once their abuser is aware of what's happening,
Yeah.
it can be very dangerous.
Yes.
It
Well,
was
yeah, yeah,
part of what was happening.
if I can't have you, nobody else can.
Exactly.
You're not going to take my kids, and I own you. Who do you think you are?
Exactly.
I mean, a whole tutti frutti in there. Um, there's another big, huge poster that we're sending out there is actually letting the abuser know that really they can get away with it.
Right. It
Right?
is.
Where's your support? Where's their accountability? Where's their support for them to understand that this is not good, that they have to go through their own mental awareness program? Instead of all of that, it's just letting know, oh, don't worry, that the tide will calm down. It'll be a soft wave and you're okay, and they're basically
Sure.
just giving them permission to kind of carry on. The abuser is
It
an
is.
abuser.
It does. And it does. And it also, I learned over the years, I've learned new terms that have come out and interesting information. The newest one was, post-separation abuse, and flying monkeys was quite an interesting term, because for many who do get out, the idea that abuse stops once you get out.
Right.
For many, the abuse does continue through the court systems, through even being separated, and understanding what that means. Flying monkeys are when, even if the court orders come through that their abusers have to be, they have to behave or be silenced. The approach is that their support networks will now take on the abuse. And see, the courts and the protections, even for domestic violence, do not have anything in place for all of those that surround anyone that's associated with your abuser. So you can have anyone attached to your abuser continue the abuse on a victim, that even if it's a mental, financial, through the court systems, social media, and yet that continues in play for a lot of people, through and there's nothing that individuals can do. And so it is something for victims and survivors, that it is an ongoing process for many of them. Support systems for them is something that is a very vital part of their process, that they is something that they need.
I mean, a major overhaul, not just of this particular system, but of everything. I have a series called the Forgotten Children series, and hopefully a book will be coming out later this year, a collaborative book. If we don't educate our children right from the word point, and I don't mean academic, I mean empathy, kindness, caring, and being able to speak about what frustrates them, how to handle frustration and anger, how to treat a guy or a girl. If we don't teach that to our children, if it's not taught then continuously through either religion or school, I mean, we send our kids to school, and the biggest thing they learn is either to become the bully or run from the bully.
Sure.
And the amount of bullies that are created in school, that they've got the taste of the power now, and then they go on to be bigger thugs
Absolutely.
later on, or people that are too scared to go home and say anything, because mom and dad aren't going to understand, or they're going to be perceived as a wimp. We have to teach kids right from the very word go. Your voice matters, and nothing is too big or too
Absolutely.
small for us to address. And we need to talk about that, give them the tools as children of how to handle
Absolutely.
things. Then it doesn't bottle up, it doesn't become their demons that instead of dealing with, they take out on someone else.
Right. Absolutely. I think relationships, I think even with my generation, we were very good about, opening up and talking about, uh, sex, and making sure that, kids had information, at appropriate, thinking, oh, age appropriate, this is what we need to talk about. Um, but realistically, relationship
Yes.
the conversations at early ages, and you're right, friendships,
Mm-hmm.
acquaintances, partnerships, the red flags, what are expectations, what do you want from somebody, and even, the friendship
Yeah.
expectations,
Yeah.
equal playing ground is the same thing. And in a relationship with somebody, we talk about the physical, but there should be that conversation so that healthy relationships carry on into adulthood. And,
Yes.
um, because sometimes, I mean, not every parent works out, and that's okay. I think that, people get hung up on, well, if it doesn't, it's not forever ever, that's a negative. Well, I think that there are parents that I've seen, parents that, they do great co-parenting.
Yes.
Just it wasn't meant for them to, be forever and ever, but they do lovely co-parenting together,
Right.
and they're very healthy, and their children are benefiting from that.
Right.
And and there are parents who probably should have made a conscious decision to not just stay married for their children, because yeah, your kids do see everything.
Yes.
More than you know.
Our kids are just, I mean, I was in a mental abusive relationship, and it was my kids that came along and said, I can't stand this anymore. Time to divorce him. And it was my kids pushing me to do that, and because, I'll stay for the kids, the youngest one's only got a few more years, and, let them go out into the world strong. And they just said, we can't stand by and watch this anymore. We're not going to
Yeah,
tolerate it. It's got to end. And our kids are so much stronger than we give them credence to. And I think one of the disfavors we do is when we dismiss their opinion. And,
absolutely.
and kids who see their parents either physically or emotionally abusing their mother or the father, because I've done quite a few shows on male abuse as well, especially
Absolutely.
mental male abuse. Not only is it a pattern they may learn, and that's what they continue on to do in their relationships, but it also can be something that really hurts them to see
Absolutely.
one of their parents in emotional or physical trouble, because they feel, what can I do? What can I do
Absolutely.
about it? And then they're also scared that whoever the abuser is going to turn it in on them. And this is not where a child should be. They should feel safe in their own home.
Absolutely.
And if we don't address it right, I mean, when you look at your husband's behavior, did he come from a family of that same type of patterning? Right? And if we don't stop the program just keeps on running. And we have to look at the
Sure.
program, and we do on a computer. This program no longer is functional. In fact, it's slowing my computer down. So that program needs to go, and a new program
Sure.
needs to come in. We need to address that, because this is a family affair. It's not just between the husband and wife. It's affecting everybody in the family.
Sure. Absolutely. And even, afterwards, my daughters and I have sat down, we've had very open, very frank conversations, because, and even at that point, my daughters are adults now. And, we've talked about, going forward.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's been a lot of therapy, a lot of conversations, a lot of good conversations where, very close, and, very proud of the resilient young women they've
Yeah.
become. But, you're absolutely right. Going through and seeing, and being there in places where, in my world, I'm thinking I'm sheltering them from
Yeah.
things that they shouldn't. But knowing that, then they think they have to become protectors.
Mm-hmm.
And, so talking about, it's not just not wanting to become the next abuser, but also not wanting to be the next victim either.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I no more want them to be like in some respects, like me in that
Yes,
relationship either.
yes, yes, yeah.
And becoming a healthier and so I do believe that, the conversation, although I don't think it's ever too late, but I think it does need to start earlier,
Yes, I agree.
about where people, you know, they should want somebody who's a partner, a true partner in a
Mm,
relationship, that, stands next to them, not in front of or behind,
yes.
but somebody who is really next to them and they can enjoy all of the things that, we get caught up in the fairy tale,
Mm,
the,
happily ever
the
after.
ever
Yeah.
after. And so trying to, I'm like, there's credence to it.
Mm,
And I said, but it's what you want in the happy ever after. And I said, I think you can create that. I said, but the being swept off.
mm,
I had somebody tell me one time, nobody comes in a night in a white horse.
mhm.
That's your first red flag.
Right.
Uh,
Yes. And,
First
and
red
and and
flag.
an abuser generally can be utterly charming. People can see
Oh,
them as
very much.
that knight on white horse. They can see that person. They just
Yeah,
don't know what the hell you're talking about. It must be you.
yeah,
You must aggravate them because just look at them. They're so
yeah. Light
gregarious
up
and
the
this and that.
room.
Yeah, yeah,
They really
yeah,
are. And
yeah.
and so when you're so overwhelmingly charming that the room takes up and you fade away. So when you fade away for how amazing they are, then before you fade out, it's time for them to go away.
Yes,
you know
yes.
um and that really, I had to look back, and in some respects that was me and my husband.
Hmm.
He was so charming and so fun and so different
Yeah. But you
that
kept forgiving them, right? Yeah.
oh, the more I wrapped into him, the more I lost me. And
Yes.
I was so involved.
Yes.
I was so willing to leave everything behind.
Yeah. That was me
And
for
so,
20
but
years too. So it's you
oh,
just it's just that you keep making excuses for the bad
oh, yeah,
behavior, right? Because when they're charming and again nobody believes you because they're so charming. Oh, you're just being
absolutely.
neurotic, you're just a drama queen. Uh,
Yeah.
even after we divorced, um, I was talking with a friend and I was telling her a few things. She said, I never I never saw that. I just thought you were the perfect couple. And the
Yes.
shame of it is even during that relationship, I would tell a couple of people what I was going through, but they chose not to hear it because they'd bought
Oh,
into an illusion of what we
yeah.
were and didn't want to hear a reality of what we were.
Yes. I actually sat with a group of people who at the time, there was couples. We were sitting in our backyard one night, and we had been to a party uh, the previous weekend, and he had, in front of people, he had slapped me in my face. And one of the couple's wives, she was absolutely irate. And
Mm-hmm.
when he said, "Oh, she knows I'm only joking," she goes, "No, that's not funny. That's
Yeah,
absolutely not funny."
excuse me. If
I was
that's just your
mortified.
joke, yeah.
I was so mortified. I just wanted to crawl in a hole,
Right.
and I was mortified. And um, so when we were with another group of friends, um, the incident came up, and he was like, yeah, they got mad, and we were just joking. He goes, "Don't you ever just like play slap with your spouse?" And I was like, and so I had to kind of put out there, I was like, well, he did slap me in my face. But he laughed. He's like, I only joke around. And so all the other couples thought, well, yeah, we slap. She's like, oh, she goes, if every time I hit him, people took it seriously, she goes, we'd all be in jail. And
Mhm.
that was it. I knew then
Yeah. There was
that
no,
it didn't matter.
yeah,
Everybody just thought this was funny. And
yeah,
so as they joked and laughed, I faded back into the
right.
background.
Yeah.
It
Feeling,
didn't
how do I
matter.
get out of this? Nobody will believe me. Where is there to go? I'm
Yeah.
unworthy. This is just my
Yeah.
lot in life. You go through the whole thing. And then, as you said, that point of recovery, but your point of recovery, you were beginning to recover, but then he died, but he was killed, right? He was murdered?
No, he
No,
was not. He
no.
drowned.
But how
It
did
was
that
after the
happen?
party. He went missing. So after the party, he was really irate because I had told him that night we had a 30-day because I'd asked for divorce before Christmas,
Hmm.
and I was done. His antics.
Yeah.
We had gone through, um, a bunch of very public inappropriate behaviors for the last several months. And at that point, I had said, I think it's time we need to be adults. And he had turned around and made some very unnecessary threats. And at that point, I knew my oldest was coming home for Christmas, and I wanted nothing at that point. I said, well, one last Christmas. So we had a 30-day deal, and I was going to perform wifely duties. And I had to check in at all costs. I couldn't go anywhere without telling him. I had to be at locations he had to call, and he would check up on me. And if he couldn't find me, he would call, and I had to have my calendar always where he could be. So, and that ensured that when my daughter came home, he would be on his best behavior.
Wow.
So we had gone to this hail and farewell, which was for military. It's an exit for somebody and an entrance for the new person. So it's a hello and goodbye, essentially. And it was really saying goodbye to somebody that had been a mentor to me while he was there. And I really didn't know the new person coming in. And but it was the XOs on the executive officers on the base. And so we had gone that evening, and it was a social, so everybody had been having a nice time. There were speeches, and so when we were there throughout the evening, we would kind of talk to members, and it was invitation only. And my husband had asked me to come outside because he was irritated because I wasn't following him around for the evening. And as
Ball and
I
chain evident.
pretty much, so as we went outside, he started to get really angry with me. And at that point, he grabbed me and started to shake me, which the assault that he was grabbing and pulling when I had to do investigations with the NCIS, I had bruising all down my arms from how hard he was yanking and pushing and jarring at me. So I'm trying to get him to get off me and pushing off. And at that point, I told him that our 30 days was up and I wanted a divorce and I didn't want anything to do with him. And I was able to get him off me, and I ran from him. And then a fight ensued out in front of the club, and I got away from him again after he made a huge scene in front of everybody that we were at the party with. And he chased me again into the ladies' room and tried to get on top of me at that time. And he was pushed out of the bathroom, and I heard some plates crash, and I never saw him again. There was, it was sometime later that I ended up hearing he got into a fight with the captain of the base. That he went over to his house and essentially broke into his house. He just
Wow.
walked in and got into the fight. He was not invited over. He just walked into his house and got into a fight. And then left there, and he disappeared. Nobody heard from him. The next day, when he came outside and I had talked to the new XO that night, because I was frightened. I mean, at this point, I'm frightened of him.
Yes,
And
yes.
so, yeah, so his response was, which is pretty much the response we were getting at that time on the base, was obviously I have a problem with my husband. So his advice to me was I should divorce him. And I said, well, that's nice, but I need somebody to deal with him now. And so his dealings with my husband was he sent my husband to go home to my, at that time, 15-year-old daughter. And he sent me home with somebody, with another female on the base. So I'm lucky that on actuality that my husband, who was in a drunken rage, didn't actually go home and do
Yes,
something even more violent.
right.
Um, but I went home with another female, and the next morning, I had ended up finding out he didn't go home to my house. Um, it wasn't unusual for my husband to do disappearing acts over the 20 years. When he got mad, he would sometimes just disappear. Sometimes when he was mad for a few hours, sometimes overnight for several hours. The last time he had done it was a few months before, where he had been sitting out 30 feet from my house watching me while I panicked because he was missing. Um, and so I ended up reporting that he was missing later on that day, when I hadn't heard from him. And then on the 11th was when they found that he had drowned. But his system, he had 3 times the legal limit of alcohol, and he had Prozac in his system. And when I ended up getting his medical records, he had been, unbeknownst to me, spending time with the base medical doctors, being prescribed with changing amounts of Prozac, Atarax, and other psychiatric drugs that he had been changing. And he wasn't supposed to be drinking during those
Right,
times,
of course.
which he had been drinking, obviously, lots of alcohol
Right.
since he was 3 times the legal limit
Yeah.
at his death. So, and he did lead credence because during the 6 months he was very erratic. We had quite a few instances where I had, and over the course actually of the last year and a half, things had not been good, but the last 6 months had been quite escalating. No, yeah, he drowned.
So they think he just
Um,
fell in on his own?
Possibly there, yeah, there was nothing leading to any
Hmm.
other than drowning at this point. But yeah, so his behavior was quite over the top that evening.
I mean, I'm sure he was warned in taking those drugs, you can't drink, but he's probably one of those people that you can't tell him what to do because he knows better.
No, and I mean, we had been in counseling during the 20 years. I mean, he had, by the time he had had, in my knowledge level, he had had 2 other drinking instances, DUI, and counseling. We had done counseling throughout the time we were married for different issues. And then when after he passed is when I ended up finding out he had had several other DUIs while we were married. And then, of course, his military record found that he was discharged for drugs and alcohol. When then that's how
And
he
how
was.
come you never knew that? I mean, when at that time, did you just tell you, oh, I'm leaving, I'm
Oh,
going? I mean, how
right.
come you didn't know?
One would, so that's also the fallacy, being a spouse, it leaves us in a very,
Mm,
you would think that would be something they should tell us, because you can put us in a very dangerous
yeah,
situation. You're sending somebody home in that manner. There's a lot of, mental instability just in that manner. But no, I actually was pregnant with our daughter, and I thought he had come home. I was having complications, and I thought that he had come home. My doctor sent a Red Cross message, and so I thought he had come home on the Red Cross message, and it was very timely. But that wasn't how he actually came home, and so it worked out well for him. And then he said he was going to be home awaiting orders, but he was actually discharged due to what they call an NJP, non-judicial punishment. And yeah, he was just discharged. And so
So
luckily,
then he kind of got a civilian job on the base.
no, he didn't. He was actually floundered for quite a while with jobs until, let's see, until about 10 years before he passed away. So he only worked for the military, the base, for about 10 years. And so he had done odd jobs here and there. And he got into retail at one point. No, financially, it was very tight for many
Mm,
years.
mhm.
But he got into retail working. And so and I working, he had never had a problem with me working as long
Right.
as
You were making money.
I, yes, making money was not a problem as long as it didn't interfere with him. And I always stayed a little bit below where he was.
Right.
Um, and then the problem came in when he, the jobs superseded his.
Mm.
Financially, he made more money than me, but my job
Yeah, you couldn't
title,
have a position that was higher than his, right?
no,
The ego
no,
wouldn't allow it, right?
correct. So as long as he was higher than me, his job, he was always the full-time job. I could have part-time. I was the one who had to take off work if the kids had a
Right.
problem, that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
So,
that sounds terribly familiar. Uh, 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 if I did volunteer work at the school, it's like, but you're not getting paid. So if I then went and did a job, the children are suffering. So you didn't
right.
win what you did, right? Yeah.
Yes,
So,
it was like he liked to tell people, basically we lived well above our means.
mhm,
I don't think people quite understood that. He liked us to dress well. He picked my clothes out. He liked to be the appearance of the Joneses, but we weren't the Joneses. We
right,
didn't have the financial means to be the
right.
Joneses. There were times that we were on welfare. We were on WIC. I would have to go to the WIC office. I would have to go get the checks. I would
Yes.
have to go cash them. Um, but it was a it was a fantasy that he lived in,
Mhm.
um, and the story that he told. But yeah, it was a it is
They had to
hard to
save
imagine.
face, right?
It is,
They had
yeah,
to save face. Their image of people's perception of him was very, very important. And so whatever went on at home, you had to make it work. You had to
right.
make it work. But his face had to be saved, right?
And you learn to be quiet about it.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of other women out there that do this because if the contradictions
Mm-hmm.
become much more, you learn not to. It's
Mm-hmm.
just what you deal with at home becomes, you learn to play the fantasy life because, not because I thought it was so wonderful. I mean, it was very stressful not being able to pay my bills.
Yes.
We could pretend to be something we weren't, wasn't exciting.
No.
Um, you
Or not,
know,
where's the money for the next meal? You're
right.
going to be able to cover the mortgage or the rent or whatever. Yeah,
Absolutely.
it is a very stressful thing. And again, that I mean, obviously, right now a lot of people are going that through COVID, etc., different
Yeah.
circumstances. But it's when people are constantly protecting the illusion of themselves.
Exactly.
At the cost of, instead of saying, okay, let's downsize, let's live more within our means. This is family is more important. It wasn't. His ego was more important. The persona of him
Absolutely.
was more important. And if you did not live up to his image of what you should be, the perfect, slim, trim, this, that woman, in fact, they picked out your clothes. Mine
Yes.
never dared to go that far. um,
Oh, yes.
I would criticize the way I looked, though, yes. But that control that he had on you, it was purely and utterly for his saving face,
Oh,
because of the insecurity that was screaming inside of him.
oh, yeah. And there was a point, and the girls they're like, please don't ever look like this again. Where I had gotten so thin that you could literally see my bones, you could see my
Mm,
rib cage. And so I, but I wasn't thin the
You
right
know,
way.
right, exactly. Yeah.
And so he did make it, I think it was supposed to be a compliment. And so at one point he said that we'd been married long enough and he'd gotten quite used to the way I looked. And um, and so, this is just the way it was. But we now had enough money, and we weren't hurting. And we had saved. And he said, so if I wanted to alter the way I looked, he would pay for it.
Right.
But he was used to the way I looked. So if I didn't want to, he was okay with that too. It wasn't like he was going to leave me. So I
Oh,
think
how
there was like
nice
a
of him.
right. I think there was a compliment in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Um, but it did there was a time especially afterwards that it was that those images, it was a little hard for me even looking in the mirror. And so there were things that I did alter because I was so deeply rooted and I couldn't get past those messages,
Right.
that I just didn't fit, because maybe that's why, I wasn't okay. There was something deeply flawed with me.
Right.
And so um, I, I don't find regrets. I think regrets they're a waste of time.
Yes.
But in those instances, I do wish I would have waited a bit because I listened to a message in my head that got repeated a lot.
Mm.
And and at this point, I'm at a different place with some of that. Good days and bad days, like I said. But
Yeah, and this is what people don't understand is that you're no longer in it, but you have the scars. Oh, no, 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 you can just mind over matter. You can just ignore. And I'm not in the same space. And anytime I get into a space and I think I can't cope with this, my eyes go back. Well, look what you had to cope with there. And look where you are
right,
now. You've got the
right,
strength and the courage in you to face whatever, but they don't realize those scars are there. Doesn't matter what plastic surgery or anything else emotionally you do, those scars are
right,
there, and they're always going to cover up the red flags of the distrust, the am I still worthy?
right,
Could anybody love me honestly for who I really am?
right,
Really? You're going to go
right,
through all of those questions, and it is a constant daily recovery from it. It
sure.
gets easier as you go, as you say, good days, bad days, but you still get those days, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. And for me, um, trust is a huge
Yeah.
issue. Because I think that um, I I I do have a hard time thinking that people are
On the up and up. They
on the up
truly
and
are
up.
what they represent. I
Yeah,
know.
I
Yeah.
do. I'm like, I don't know.
It's just too
So
good to be true, I had one relationship after my husband and I divorced, and I did the same mistake, and I went after somebody that was more spiritually intellectual, which I am, and so we were really kind of in sync there, and we went to business together, and then the relationship stopped, but the business carried on, and then the business flopped, and we were living together, and it was just like, how to sever, and I stay too long. I always stay too long,
yes,
and it's like well, maybe it's me. I went around down that rabbit hole again, and it was like, oh God, just so many years wasted. The
yes,
message is that when it's over, it's over. You know,
yes,
cut the ties and move on. You don't stay, even if it's, oh, well, we're just friends now, just living together. No, that blocks you from
yes.
having any other life. So, yeah,
I do have to and I think that's one thing, people, if it's just not working out, it's just not working out. And
exactly.
I did the same thing. And I think in some respects, I created a placeholder.
Mm,
I had spent so many years with my late husband that I didn't know how to be alone.
right.
And so trying to fill a void. And
Hmm.
again, like I just didn't know when to say, this is not working out.
Right.
And so you keep going, and then again went into the justifications. Well,
Yes.
it's okay because it's this. It's okay. It's because
Yeah.
no, it's just not working.
Right.
And
And it's
then
okay to cut ties. It's
it is okay
okay.
to cut
Yes.
ties. And, so, but there was a learning process. And I tried to find positives. Well, at least I didn't go 20 years.
Yeah, exactly. It was only
uh,
11 this time.
right. I have to find something in there, and so there's there are some things, or something that I have to feel, and so, but I at this point it's just I'm with me.
And that
This is
actually the
my
greatest
time.
relationship you can have is with yourself. To get to that
Absolutely.
stage that I don't need external company. It is
Right.
nice to have it now and again. It's nice to
It
be
is.
around people, but I'm more at home when I'm at home with self.
Yes. And I am enjoying that.
Yeah,
And, and rebuilding, or, getting to, with family and friends and support networks, and enjoying the time that, sometimes you lose when you're trying to salvage something that really isn't
yeah,
there to begin with. But, I'm so the networks that I have, and that's really something it's very positive. And for the first time, I have now seen where, yeah, it is about me,
yeah,
and I like that.
yes.
And I think people do miss out on that, and that has been very healing in this
Well, I'd
time.
imagine writing the book has been extremely healing as well, because, writing the book, you're talking about obviously the system that is broken, but you're talking about where you were at and everything else. And there's something about kind of writing it that can be very cathartic at the same time being very informational for other people.
Sure. It was very emotional, and it was a process to go through, because in some respects I was reliving a
Hmm.
large part of, my life, and, some parts that I didn't really want to go back to,
Right.
but it, it was necessary to encompass, um, to really give a total experience for those that read the book, and understand another perspective. And it's for me, it's giving for people, maybe they haven't gotten to that point where
Yeah.
they realize what's happening in their own, or they're trying to come out on the other side and thinking, this is really rough and I don't know if I can keep going along,"
Yeah.
or they're thinking about going back, which, what, spending the 20 years, it is going back. I stayed, and I thought of leaving and went back multiple times. And so it is, I have had people who've, sent me feedback, and they realize they made a good decision. And
Hmm.
that's extremely, that does it makes it very positive experience.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
that makes it
you've
worthwhile.
got these statistics on your site, that 20,000 calls are placed every day to the domestic violence hotlines nationwide. That is those that call, because
Yes.
many people will not call. And you've got 7 out of 10 psychological abuse women display symptoms of post-traumatic stress and depression. Yes, that's
Yes.
very much the byproduct of it. And you've got 16,912 reported incidents of military spouse and intimate partner abuse. Broken down, and 87% of abused military spouses do not report their physical abuse. And 15% of the military and veteran family abuse victims do not feel physically safe in their relationship. These are figures that we can't ignore. We have to do something about it. And, thank you for taking your own tumultuous journey, first placing value upon yourself, coming out of the woods on, and stepping into yourself for you. And then having the courage to write the book and share the story, but also share some of the perspectives and solutions that you have done in order to be where you are today, but also shedding light on this. Because if we do not keep it in the light, it's very easy to slither back into the dark again. And so
Absolutely.
we have to keep shedding the light on it. We have to keep talking about this, because we put so much emphasis on pandemics and this demic and that demic, we don't realize there's an emotional demic going on right now of abuse, and it's been there forever. But we have to step up at this point in time and say, okay, this is not acceptable. What's causing this abuse in the first place? How do we, right from the very core, our children, in the way a wife and a husband treat each other as becomes the mother and father of those children, how we can support the families to be better families so they can bring up their children in a more secure, loving manner, so that we don't have the dysfunctional adults later. All the dysfunctionality out there at the present moment, it can be addressed back to their childhood. So, let's get this conversation going. Let's get it really under the microscope. We are tired of behind closed doors. We're tired of things being brushed under the rug. We're tired of people making excuses. We're tired of people not living up to the accountability and responsibility of their actions. And no more, simply no more. It is that we're not going to tolerate this anymore, and band a bunch of military spouses together that have gone through this. You know what you need to see change. If they're confused about what needs to happen, you're quite happy to step in and help them redirect their program, that it does become more inclusive and more getting to the root and the core of the problem, instead of, oh yes, nice little surface, see us, we're doing this and now la 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 la. Yeah, no, we're not accepting that anymore, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
And
There's
so
definitely much more room for improvement. No, change, not improvement.
Right, exactly. Yes, change, totally change. So this is your career change now, is obviously talking about this change, your book obviously coming out and addressing these figures. What else are you doing right now, other than getting this message out? How else can you help people?
Well, right now I'm focusing on this. I've been focusing on my family and healing. So as things have been changing I retired from government service at this point, and decided that this direction was really more where I needed to go at this point.
Bringing the awareness, right?
Absolutely.
That's the thing. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that, it's slow going, where, sometimes people don't want to hear the things that need to go, but eventually I think that people will catch on around, and I hope that change does happen.
It's only going to happen through persistence, through it constantly, the light being shed on it, not allowing it to go into the dark, holding people accountable. We don't need to give them the same behavior as they're giving us. So we don't need to take up arms, but we can arm in arm demand change.
Absolutely. And I'm not going anywhere. So I've been quiet for so long that I know that at this point I can easily be much more vocal than I was silent.
Right. And like the way he went out, for his own drunken rage, did he do you a favor? Would the divorce have been absolutely horrific? Which probably would have been, because he wasn't going to give up his control that easily. So who knows what path would have gone down there, because he definitely had, all the markers to be violent through the divorce. And we know that so many times when people are divorcing without that support, with the angry partner, that many oftentimes they rather take the spouse out than anything else. It's not just, in the movies, folks, it's fact. And so if somebody's in an abusive relationship and you say to them, well, just leave, at least give them the avenues that they can turn to for help while leaving, because it's not just a question of packing their bags and going. It's that can be more detrimental. It's about helping them by showing the abuser that they have a wall around them of support, and that it's going to be much, much harder for them to take out the revenge on you, because otherwise they can.
Right. Absolutely. Yes. I know it's far too easy for people to say, oh, you can just leave him. It's just do it, just pack your bags and go. And people don't realize just how dangerous that can be for somebody. And then, it can also make the victim feel very defeated, because, if it sounds so easy and then they don't know how to do it, now it's just one more piece of guilt that
Yes.
they place on their shoulders. So, that what you really could do to help somebody that you feel is in this situation is be there for them, be supportive, help them know that you're there for them, listen. And if you really feel the situation is volatile and dangerous, help find immediate support for them in the outlying communities.
Yeah. In order for them to get out, they have to go somewhere safe. Right.
Absolutely.
And we know that, going to the military or to the police, the burden of proof that this is happening, it falls on the victim.
Right.
And it's almost, well, you're lying until proven innocent, instead of
Absolutely.
you're the victim and this is the predator.
Right.
And if they could change that entire approach, it's the same with rape victims.
Right.
They rape them again over the coals with the distrust, or yes, it does happen where there's false accusations. Yes, it does happen, but you can't treat every one of them like that. And most of the time, people who have been raped do not come up forward because they just feel that they will be going through the abuse again. But if you made it a safe place, if you made it a place where they have the support, if you made it a place where you honor them for who they are, anybody going through any abuse, then we would see so much more courage from people stepping up to be a part of that change. So it is up to us to give them that same play, support. And your local area, if they're incapable or just cannot access it, call around for them. What can they do? They need a safe place to go. They need advocates. Guarantee that there will be no money in their kitty to afford a lawyer or to afford anything, because that person will be the person that holds the purse strings as well. So
absolutely,
there's a lot of help that needs to step up here in order for a person to leave that abusiveness. And number one is police. Please take that abusiveness seriously.
absolutely.
As you said, you went to counseling, the two of you, yet still.
We
Yeah.
did. And there were, and counselors did see his raid, and there were some that he actually did tell them that he was abusive.
Yeah.
Which
Yet,
isn't, nothing was done.
oh yeah, you don't mean it, do you? No, don't do that again. Yeah,
yes.
Right.
And so it's, and there are reporting requirements in some, but more so now, so than there was in the past. Now, if you go into counseling, there is, if you go into counseling, there are protections in place where they're supposed to be, where, if there is harms, threats of violence, known domestic violence, there should be protections in place for victims.
Yeah.
And so there is more out there, but a lot of it is education, even in the even in the counseling world, and trying to find somebody who's really knowledgeable or understanding of things that are happening. A lot of it is just getting more.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that let's empower the victim. Right. And let's hold the abuser accountable, but let's also get help for the abuser, because that abuse is systemic from a patterning in their past.
Right.
And, there are the psychopaths that like to abuse purely because they get pleasure out of it, right? That's a different thing altogether. But for a lot of these people, they're just injured souls and they just don't know where to go.
Right. And I don't think, my late husband, I think somewhere in there, he wasn't a bad person.
Just had demons. He just had demons.
Really did. And, with all the years of counseling, and they were failed counseling, I don't think we would have been good married.
Right.
But I think somewhere along the line, if somebody would have really gotten through and helped him, and it's a two-way street, you have to want the help too.
Yeah.
But I feel it would have been beneficial for him, and maybe he could have been a better parent.
Yes.
Um, he could have been a better human being. He could have been better for himself. He would have enjoyed life a lot better. And so it could have enabled us to be better co-parents.
Right.
Um,
We're in a mess as a human society. Abuse has been around since the beginning of time, and a lot of it with men, and they feel it's their right. But it also comes from a patterning that they've been given, that no, you're the man, you put her in her place. And no, guys, let's just put out the tweet there right now. No, that's not accepted. She is your equal.
yes,
She is your equal in parenting. She's your equal in life. She is a person in her own right, and you're there to support one another to be the best you can be individually and collectively.
yes, absolutely.
So we have to change the way we actually look at, even relationship coaches, or even the church that has, the potentials to be spouses. They go through these courses first, but that's all to do with religion, and it's not to do with the rights. And, when we're looking at human rights, if you're a human being, it doesn't matter what sex you are, if you're binary or if you're trinary, it is about your own individual rights as a human being to be loved, to be respected. But first of all, we have to love and respect ourselves, because if not, we're bringing that dysfunction to any other relationship.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thanks for taking this journey. Now, how do people get hold of the book, and how did they get hold of you?
Absolutely. So I do have a website. It's my name, larasabanosh.com.
Can you spell that for people who are listening, please, love?
Sure. LARASABANOSH.com. And you can purchase the book directly through me, or there are links on there to any of the major book sites: Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Indie. All of those you can actually order from as well.
Bookshop in Indie Bound, and a couple of others there too, so plenty of them.
Absolutely.
And this is a book that most certainly should be at any centers, abuse centers or anything else, because it's when we relate, when we hear somebody's story, and it doesn't matter, it could be a totally different place, etc., but the things that are going on, gosh, that's what I'm going through. It becomes a survival guide for people. It becomes, I hear you, I feel you, I've been through it, and this is what I did, to get through it. And it makes them feel they're not alone, and that they can find that strength and courage to speak out, and they can seek the help. My suggestion for anybody who's going through any of this abuse right now, and you want to get out of it, and we want you out of it as soon as you can, but look to your area of support, of where you can go with your children, with your cat and dog, where you can go that is safe. And if you can diffuse the situation with the person you wanted to leave and do it calmly, great. But if you know that they're physically and violent, go and get the help beforehand, so that you can make that exit and go somewhere where you know you're safe and start again. The support is out there for you. You've just got to look for where it is.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Lara, for sharing, and keep on sharing, because it most certainly is a message that we need to keep addressing. This domestic violence must be taken seriously, and we really must, when we open up the doors to the do's and the don'ts in a relationship, when we open up the doors so that if you are in an abusive relationship, it's safe for you to say, it's safe for you to leave, then we're actually giving more permission for people to step into their own light, their own individual light, and less abuse will be around, because they will be, I'm out of here, mate. You're going to be treating me like this? I'm out of here, right? And we want to see more of them. And for people who are abusing, you may think you're not. Telling her that she's fat, or she's gaining weight, or she's, you don't like that dress, and your hair's, well, you're not going out like that, are you? All of that type of thing builds up as to breaking down the self-esteem, and that is soul destroying, and that is a form of abuse. So just you thinking that those words are okay to say, no. Would you want them said to your daughter? Would you want them said to you? So if you don't want them said to you, don't say them to someone else. Okay. Thank you so much, Lara. Until next time, folks. Bye for now. We hope that you enjoyed the show right here on selfdiscoverymedia.com. Please tune in to our selfdiscoverymedia.com/shows and you will see all the other genres that we have from you. Every week on Tuesday, we bring you new shows from illuminating people. If you know someone that should be interviewed, please contact us at info@selfdiscoverymedia.com. Now stay tuned for your next show.